Hi, my name's Ellen from the Spellbound Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to make these Union flag fringe earrings. Now, they're made using a technique called ladder stitch for the top part of the earring, and the bottom half is just a beaded fringe. There's a chart I have to show you the bead placements. I've used all size 10 seed beads in a silverline blue, pearl white and a silverline red. We're going to make the top section of our earring using ladder stitch. So we're going to follow the grid that we've got here, and we're going to thread on 2 rows at a time. So we're going to start with the longest row across the bottom, and of course, as you can see, these are all blue beads, so we don't have to worry about changing colour for the moment. So we're going to start by making our 11 rows along the bottom. Thread your needle with approximately 1 metre of thread. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up 4 beads off the mat. And then thread them onto your thread. And then you're going to pass your needle back up through the first 2 that you picked up. Then pull your thread into a loop. Like that. And then pass your needle back down through the second 2 beads, which sort of squares them off slightly. And then we're going to add another 2 beads onto the end. So you can pass your needle back through the last 2 beads. So down through your beads like so. And then reposition your needle back up through those 2 beads that you've just added. So keep trying to keep the thread nice and tight, don't want it to get too wiggly. Thread on 2 beads, pass up through the 2 beads that you've just added. Then pass your needle back through the 2 new beads, back down. Thread on 2 beads, back down. So you're making a loop each time on the end of your row, and then passing your needle back up through those 2 beads. So sometimes you'll be going up through the beads and sometimes you'll be going down. So you're pressing on, thread on 2 beads. This time we're going up, pull the beads in, and then we're going to reposition the needle back down through these beads. And then thread on 2 beads, and this time we're going back down again to make a loop. Then reposition your needle back up. So we're going to keep adding rows along here until we get to 11 rows. Each time moving up and down, picking up 2 each time. Just use your thumb just to control them so that they stay where you want them. I'll have a little count, see where we've got to. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's just 1 more row on the end here. So reposition my needle through there. Add 2 onto the end. And then your needle back up. So you've got your thread path should be leaving at the end there. Okay, so next we're going to go on to the next row. Now we're going to do the first 2 rows together at the beginning. So if you add on, pick up 4 beads and then go down the next bead along, and then back up through the previous 4 beads, and then we're going to go, this time we're just going to go down through 3. So the 2 beads you've just added plus one of the beads from the previous row. And then we're going to reposition your needle 1 row along and pass it up through here. It's a bit awkward, it might not want to go. And then if you refer back to our chart, you can see that we've threaded these 2 ones on here, so the next 2 beads we're going to need to put on are in fact white ones. So for the next few rows along here, we're just going to be adding white beads, and we're adding these 2 rows here. Pick up 2 white beads, and then pass back down through your previous row, through the 2 new beads you've added plus the third one from the row below. You want those to sit there. Pass along and then back up again through the 2 white ones you've just added. And try not to get your thread tied in a knot. There we go. And then we're going to add another 2 white ones. Down through just the 3rd bead. Then back up through the previous row, and then down through the new beads you've just added. Through the bead for the row below, and then back up the next one. Okay. And then we're going to put our blue beads in, which acting as a border. So 2 beads there. Oh, it doesn't want to go through. There we go. And then once you've got onto the final row, just pass up last bead there. Thread on 2. Pass down the row before. And this time you're going to position your needles, instead of going all the way up to the top of the row, you're just going to go up to 2 beads up there, so that your thread is coming out between the 3rd and 4th bead of this row here. And then we're going to skip across the row back to the row previous. So you're going to skip along to this bead here and reposition your needle up through there. So your thread will skip over, and then we've repositioned our needle in time to place the next row. So the next row is this one here. So again, because we start doing our blue border, so we're starting with 2 blue ones, and then we're going to put the first 4 beads on. So you get 2 blue ones, 3rd blue one, and a white one. So you pick up 2 blue, another one, and then a white one, and then we pass that back down through the 3rd row in, just going down the bead of the top row. Let's get them around into a circle. So you've got your first 2 rows there, double back on yourself, go back up through that row you just added, down through this row here, and then reposition along next bead in the row. And then if you look, going back to your chart, you can see we've done these first 4 beads here. So the next one is going to be an all white row. So we'll put 2 in there, down your 3, and back up 3. And then the next row, look at your next row. So we've done these 3 rows here, and the next row is going to be a red one, and then followed by 2 more red rows. Back down through the 3. There we go. Next row, another red row. And then back up. Like that, and then a 3rd red row, back through your white bead, if it will go. Doesn't seem to want to. There we are. Now, as we're doing a mirror image, you can see once we pass the centre, we know that we're going to be matching it to the first beads that we've put on. So if you find it easier to follow patterns like that rather than working your way across the chart, you can just mirror what you've done before, looking, going, oh yes, I put 2, if it's 2 white beads. And then the next row, you can see it was 1 blue one and one blue one and 1 white one. So we put 1 blue one and a white one. And then we're going to put reposition our needle there. And then we're just going to put our final row in, because we're decreasing into a sort of triangular shape. So up like that, and then we're going to put on 2 final blue ones for the border. Pass down. And then reposition your needle. So rather than going all the way up to the top row, the last bead top row on your last row, reposition your needle to come out the bead before last, and then you're going to skip over back into the centre, well not centre, so that back into the row before, and pass up through that bead there. Okay, and then you can put, and then you're ready to do the next line of your chart. So if you just carry on like that until you get up to the top point, and then I'll show you how to pop the loop at the top. So after you've completed the top part of your earring, your thread should be emerging through the central bead at the top, which should be a blue bead, and then we're just going to add on some beads for a hanging loop. In this case 4 should be sufficient. If you want a slightly larger loop, that's absolutely fine. But I'm just going to thread on 4 beads and go back down through a couple of the beads. I think I've gone through about 3 there. Don't loop it around like that. So the 4 beads are just sitting at the top. Then skip over, do a bead along the side, skip up 1, and then back to the centre again. This time you're going to be a row up. White bead, blue bead that's the top. So re-emerge back at the top where you originally were, and then go round the 4 beads you've added for your loop, just to reinforce your loop. And then we'll go back down through the central row. You can do it again, go head back up and put another reinforcing row through the loop if you so desire. They're not very heavy earrings, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem with that. And then you're just going to tie your thread off. So as you're using white thread, the best idea is probably it's going to hide best between the white beads. So if you just pass your needle through, so you make a loop, pass it back up through the opposite side, pass your needle twice through that loop, and then pull it tight, and then pass your needle into a knot, and then pass it down, through the bead underneath to tuck the end out of the way, and then you can trim that thread off. So now you can see that we've completed the top part of our earring. We're now going to add the Union flag fringing. If you take a look at the diagram, we're going to add on each row of fringing one at a time. So we're going to need just over a metre and a bit probably of white thread. Now if you see I've still got a tail hanging from when I started the top part of the earring. Don't tie that off or put any knots in right until the end, because you don't want to block any holes up that you're about to use. So first things first, we're just going to pass our thread through 2 beads on the end, like so, and just leave yourself a little tail hanging out there so you can tie that off when you're finished. So you've got a tail hanging out there. So we're going to what we're going to do is we're going to thread on this row here. So you can see we're going to put thread on 2 red, 2 white, 4 blue, 2 white and 2 red. Okay, so just pick those up on your needle. 2 red, 2 white, 4 blue, 2 white and 2 red. So thread those on, and then we're going to skip out the last bead on the row. In this case it's a red one. Leave that one to one side, and then we're going to pass our thread back up all the other beads that we've just added. So miss out the one at the end, and then we're going to pass our needle back up all these ones we've just added here. So first of all, go back up to the top of the beads you've just added, like that, and then we're going to pass that back through the same bead you've came out, which is the first one in the row, and take that up a couple of rows like that. So that hangs on the end. You don't want to pull it as tight can be. You want a little bit of movement in there, so you don't want it as poker straight if you can. Then you want to pass your needle along to the second row. Pass it back down. In the second row, we want 2 white, 2 red, 2 white, 2 blue, 2 white, 2 red, and 2 white. So pick those ones. Thread those on. Obviously this bit is quite important to get the order correct in these, otherwise you won't get the correct image of the flag. So again, do the same thing as last time. Skip out the one on the end and then thread your needle back up through the remaining beads. Do it quite carefully, make sure that you're not missing any beads out and you haven't got any loops of thread. That. You don't have to go all the way up on the one needle, you can come out halfway through like that. Then complete with the next beads. Just make sure, as I said, you don't miss anyone out. And then back up through the top 2 beads on the top part of your earring. And then pull that, and then make sure you don't do what I just did, which is loop around the previous fringe strand. See if we can loosen that off a bit. There we go. Right, don't loop around that strand. So you can see now it's got a bit of gapping and it's a bit loose. So if you hold on to your thread at the top end, and then if you just take hold of the very last bead on there with your thumbnail and just gently pull it up, that should tighten all the beads up for you. Again, not as poker straight if you can. Little bit of movement in there. Then reposition your needle along. Back down the two ones, making sure you're not creating any loops or knots. And your thread sits there. Then we're going to go on to the third row. 2 blue, 2 white, 2 blue, 4 white, 2 red and 4 white. And thread those ones on. Very much just concentrating on the pattern as you're going along. I'm using size 10 seed beads. You can use size 11s, would work perfectly well with this. I mean, if you wanted to make a bigger earring or just a bigger fringed flag like this, you could use size 8s or even size 6s if you wanted to go up, scale it up really big. 4 on the end. And then skip the one at the end and thread your needle. It's alive today. Right, thread your needle back up the row. Like so. If you do forget to skip the one in the end, then you will basically unthread all the beads you've just threaded on. Not the end of the world, just have to start again. Start that row again. Making sure your loop's out of the way. Pass up through the top 2. And what you might find is if your beads, oh, I've looped it round again. If your beads are slightly irregular in size, sometimes you can find that with different finishes, which is what I have got here. So I've got silver line, the reds and the blue ones are silver lined, whereas the white ones are a pearly finish. Sometimes they can be slightly different sizes, even if they are both size 10s, or they are all size 10s, which they are. And in this case, the white ones do appear to be coming up slightly larger. Just keep an eye on the pattern that you're making. And sometimes you might feel the need to just add an extra bead in or skip an extra bead out, just to keep the pattern. People aren't likely to be counting exactly how many beads you've got in each row. That's a bit tight there. Got a lot of thread in that one. Also might have a slightly smaller bead in that row there. But hopefully we should be able to get the next one through. So going on to our fourth row. Yeah, we've got a bit more blue at the top this one. 4 blues, 2 whites, 2 reds, 2 whites, etc. You can see that each row is getting slightly longer as we're going along. Red. And then again, skip the last one of the row. And pass your needle back up to the top of the row. I'm going to come out halfway. And then back up through here. Now, I think the second bead up here might be slightly full of thread. I don't think I'm going to get my needle back through there again. But it's okay, because what you can do is you just skip that one there. We're just going to go through the first one just to anchor it. And then you can see I've got a little bit of a loop just there. It's not quite tight. So like we did before, just hold on to the bead on the end and then just give it a little pull. Tighten it up. And then obviously, because we've only gone through the single bead this time, we need to pass back down just the single bead on the next row along. Don't stab yourself. Okay. And then we're going to go for next row, which is all white, apart from the red row across the centre, and then white at the bottom. Check they've all actually got onto the needle. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, yep. And then 2 red ones. Put those on, and then another 8 white ones at the bottom. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that. Add those on. Skip your bottom one. Thread back up through all of these. Like so, and again, like you can see, we've got a little loop there. So just hold on to the end, hold on to the last bead, give it a little tight pull and tighten it up like that. Then we can see our stripe is coming along through the centre there. Now the next row, once we reposition our needle, see where it is. This is the, if you're doing a symmetrical design, you try to decide which side's the front and which side's the back. I'll try and keep it the same, working myself the same way along for you. All the threads out of the way. So the next row is a red row. Now it's all complete red as part of the cross of the flag. Now, as I said before, sometimes the beads can be slightly different sizes to each other, even though they're not supposed to be. But they can vary slightly. So, although in the chart you should have a specific number of beads, I can't think how many it is, I think it's 22. If you thread them on, that number of beads on, and have a little look at where the fringe is hanging, you might think to yourself, actually I want it to come down to a longer point than that. So you can just always add 1 or 2 extra beads on, just to make sure that you get that actual, that might be too many, just so that you actually get the actual point on your fringing there. See, I think I might need an extra one on there just for a bit of an extra bit of definition. Like so. So then again, skip the last bead and pass back up your central strand there. And through the 2. At the top. It's going to get slightly knotted. I forgot a knot. There we go. Okay, so you can see we've completed half our fringing. So we've got half of our flag. So then you just need to complete the matching side of your fringing on the other side, following the chart. So once you've completed all your fringing, all that's left to do is weave your thread ends into the centre, and then tie your threads. So yeah, weave them into the centre and tie your thread ends off, and then we'll just need to add a earring wire. So once you've woven in all your thread ends and trimmed them neatly, all that remains to do is just attach the ear wire to the top of your earring. So just twist your ear wire open, find this hole in your loop at the top, and then gently close it, so there's no gap, and there you have your earring. Then all that remains is to repeat the whole process again and make yourself a second one.